Hello, I'm Neil Rackham, and like all of us, I'm suffering from these trying times. It's not easy, and particularly if your job is sales, you're hit harder than most. As we begin to get back into some semblance of a normal life after all this craziness, is there any useful advice that I can give you to help you? Well, actually, there is a little bit of experience that might be useful to you. In previous recessions, I've studied salespeople trying to recover, trying to bring back business to the level at which it was. And in almost every case, I see salespeople making three big mistakes. And I want to talk to you about these in the hope that it can help you avoid them as you get back to something near to normal selling. The first mistake is a fairly simple one, and that is when business is hard, when the economy is bad, we tend to chase after everything that moves. We push up the level of activity. We try to go for more business. And that means making more sales calls, opening up more contacts, activity. And you might say, well, what's wrong with that? Isn't that what we should be doing? Because after all, it would seem that if you make more calls, you're going to make more sales, yes? Not so. It can sometimes work. Let me give you a case study of when that is the right strategy. I studied an office supply product company in New York City. Their people were selling, roughly 6 customer contacts a day. And out of those, they got 2.5 sales. Now, they got a new sales VP in, and she said, hey, just look out of the window here. We're in Manhattan. In just that building that you can see across the street, there's 400 potential customers. So how is it you're only making less than 6 calls a day? She said, I want to see that doubled or I'll fire you. This being New York, they're gentle people. And true enough, people made a lot more calls. In fact, they pushed up to, I think, 12.8 calls a day from memory. And their 2.5 sales went up to 4.8 sales a day. So it looked like if you double the number of calls, you don't quite double the number of sales, but you get results. Activity brings results. So why am I saying beware activity as we recover from the situation we're in now? Well, put it this way. Most of us are in B2B selling. We're not in a simple one-call sale like the janitorial office supplies company. We're more like the big company we studied in Chicago. This was a capital goods company, high tech. What we found there was they had a new vice president in. And again, the new vice president said, hey, in my previous company, which was consumer goods, the more activity, the more sales. Make more calls, you get more sales. And when I look at my people, they're making less than 2 sales calls a day. So I want to see that change. And he brought in an activity management system and ran it for 6 months. I must admit, I knew the company well and I advised strongly against doing this. But anyway, he brought it in. And you might actually think it was a success. There was a 36% increase in sales calls. And that led to a 16% increase in sales. Good news, isn't it? Not quite. The average value of the sale fell significantly. So overall, the new activity management system reduced sales volume by 1.5%. And that's a pretty typical result. If you push for more activity, it means you'll often focus on the smaller, easier sale. The strategic sales that are more profitable are more important, go by the wayside. We panic a bit. We're worried about short-term business. We neglect the front of the sales cycle. We don't open up the big opportunities. We try and close the small ones. That's generally a fairly bad mistake. If you look at the most successful companies handling sales in very difficult times as an economy starts to recover from a crash, they're very selective. They focus on the best opportunities. And the way they do that is that they take business that they can't win and don't even try for it. So I've got a rule that I give people, which is, if you wouldn't chase this piece of business in good times, don't chase it in bad. Because it means it's probably not business that fits you that well. Go and put more resources into the best pieces of business. Now, if the first deadly sin of salespeople is too much sales activity, the second one is an even worse sin. And that is, salespeople negotiate when really they should be selling. Now, you might want to pause this video for a little while and think about what's the difference between selling and negotiating, if you had to put it in just one sentence. Well, pause. Here's my answer. When you're selling, you're trying to come to an agreement without giving anything away. In negotiation, you make concessions in order to get the agreement. If you make those concessions too soon in the sales process, you're much more likely to give away too much, because concessions create an appetite for concessions. You're much more likely to come across as anxious. You'll seem pushy. Customers won't trust you. The rule here is you negotiate as late in the sales process as you can. You do a really good job of trying to build needs, trying to get close to the customer, taking the customer through the buying process. Because if you do those things, yes, then the time will come to negotiate. But the best salespeople negotiate little and negotiate late. The third big mistake that I see people making is that they sell price. They think it's all about price. If I could just keep costs low, if I could undercut a competitor, I'll be more likely to get the business. They believe that decisions are being made by customers based on price. Well, all the evidence seems to be that that's not true. It's something else that's much, much more important than price. Let me tell you a story. This happened in the last big recession. I was working with an insurance company, and they were going to put all their records into an automated electronic system. Big decision. They had a lot of manual records. And they chose 3 potential vendors they shortlisted for the business. One was IBM. And the other 2 were smaller technology companies. Now, when the bids came in, IBM, understandably, was much more expensive than the other 2. When the buying committee, and I was part of that buying committee, looked at the bids. We thought, wow, IBM is really over the top, but let's look at the other two. And one of those bids was really, really much lower than the other. So we looked at the lowest bid and we called that vendor in and we said, we've been looking at your bid and is that really your final position? And all three vendors had resubmitted their stuff. And in the resubmission, IBM refused to cut their prices. They just held firm. One of the small companies, the lowest bidder, cut their prices another 10%. As soon as the purchasing committee looked at that, we said, no way. We're going to lock up the future of our company in this big electronic box. And these people may go bust. They're having a hard time. They're already lowest price. They've cut even more. There's probably something wrong with this. But the other small company asked to come and see us. And they made a presentation, and the VP of sales, who was a very smart guy, he said, you've asked for a resubmission on the basis of price. And yeah, I know, hardware prices have been falling and so on. But he said, IBM is a competitor here. And we know we're a lot cheaper than them, so price isn't really your issue. What's your issue? And the head of the committee said, well, frankly, we want to know that you're going to be around. If we're going to lock up our future, we don't want you to walk off with a key or go bust. So we don't feel safe going with you. But as the old saying goes, nobody ever got fired for going with IBM. IBM sells safety. So what happened? Well, they were able to reassure us, open their books, show us their forward plans, and we felt they were fairly solid. So we went with the middle company. But if he hadn't done that, we would have gone with IBM. In fact, IBM had the most brilliant marketing strategy in history back in the recession of the 80s. That was a time when technology was very expensive. It was a board-level decision. And those people who were responsible for deciding which computer system had a lot of risk. So IBM, at a time when digital equipment, their major competitor, cut prices 3 times, actually increased their prices. Because they said, what we sell is safety, not price. Remember that. You're in hard times. Sell safety, don't sell price. So how do you make customers feel safe? I think the best answer is you really deeply understand them and their needs. You create comfort by understanding. The better you understand the customer, the more safety you can create. So, in summary, I think we can say, in recession, don't chase every piece of business. Put more effort into the pieces of business that are best suited to you. Be very aware that the customer may be in a different part of the buying cycle than when perhaps they were before the shutdowns, before the panics. But wherever they are in that cycle, the resolution of concerns, the minimization of risk is going to be hugely important. And when you get to that point, remember, sell before you negotiate. I'm Neil Rackham. I hope you found these ideas helpful. Good luck.